Part 1. What if your most cherished beliefs are not your own? What if your deepest ambitions, the very values that define your sense of self, were not born from your own soul, but were carefully installed, like software you never consented to download? Imagine a marionette dancing on a stage. It feels the thrill of the movement, the grace of the leap, the drama of the performance. It feels free. But it never looks up. It never sees the strings. The most frightening part of this image isn't the control. It's the marionette's blissful ignorance. This is the entry point into one of the most unsettling ideas in modern philosophy, an idea that originates with the work of Karl Marx. It's the theory of false consciousness. The scary idea that your reality is not a landscape you discovered, but an architecture you inhabit. An architecture designed by unseen forces to keep you compliant, productive, and, most importantly, unaware of the strings. This isn't a story about a shadowy conspiracy. It's a story about the very air we breathe, the ideas we mistake for our own, and the hidden logic that governs our world. Part 2. Consider a paradox at the heart of our modern life. We live in an age that glorifies hustle culture. Turn on your phone, scroll through your feed, and you will find it. The gospel of the grind. Influencers and entrepreneurs preach a doctrine where exhaustion is a badge of honor, where burnout is a sign of commitment, and where your personal self-worth is inextricably tied to your professional success. We are told a compelling story. Work harder, work longer, sacrifice your sleep, your health, your relationships, and all your dreams will materialize. We are praised for being relentlessly driven, and we wear our own exploitation like a medal. This narrative is built upon a foundational myth, a cornerstone of our society, the myth of pure meritocracy. This is the belief that our world is a fair and level playing field, a system where economic goods and political power are vested in individuals based on talent, effort, and achievement, rather than on wealth or social class. It's the comforting idea that anyone, from any background, can achieve upward mobility if they just work hard enough. Every success story, every billionaire's biography, reinforces this idea. The system, we are told, is just. But here lies the deep, confusing dissonance. If success is simply a matter of hard work, why does the glorious grind so often feel like a dead end? Why do so many feel a profound sense of alienation, of running faster and faster just to stay in the same place? 7. And if the system is a fair meritocracy, why does it continue to perpetuate and even widen staggering levels of inequality? Why do we see that factors like inherited wealth and social networks often matter far more than raw talent or effort? This is the puzzle. We are encouraged to internalize a set of instructions, the how of hustle culture, that demands our total self-sacrifice. And this is justified by a promise, the why of meritocracy, that the race is fair. The two ideas work in perfect, symbiotic harmony. The meritocratic promise makes the grueling hustle seem rational and worthwhile. The existence of the hustle provides a convenient explanation for failure. If you didn't succeed, you simply didn't work hard enough. It's never the system's fault. It's always your own. This creates a powerful self-policing trap. We become defenders of the very systems that may be disadvantaging us. We vote against our own economic interests. We grow skeptical of institutions like labor unions that are designed to protect us. And we champion the architects of a system that demands more and more from us for uncertain rewards. We are told to embrace our own exploitation and call it ambition. We are told the game is fair, even as we can see the starting lines are staggered. Why do we accept these contradictions? Why do we participate so willingly? To find the answer, we must turn from the symptoms to the diagnosis, and to the philosopher who first dared to map the architecture of our invisible prison. Part 3. To solve the puzzle of our modern condition, we must look to a thinker often shrouded in controversy and misunderstanding. Karl Marx. But we must approach him not as a political firebrand, but as a profound philosopher, a diagnostician of society who sought to uncover the hidden forces that shape the very contents of our minds. His work provides a key, a blueprint for decoding the reality we inhabit. The foundation of Marx's entire model is a concept known as the base and superstructure. Imagine society as a grand building. The foundation, the base, is the economic system. It consists of the forces of production, the technology, the factories, the raw materials, and the relations of production, the class structures, the property laws, the relationship between owner and worker. This economic base is the engine of society. Growing out of this foundation is the superstructure. This is everything else: our culture, our political systems, our laws, our media, our educational institutions, our religion, our family structures. For Marx, the revolutionary insight was this: the economic base determines the shape and character of the superstructure. As he famously wrote, "It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness." In other words, the way a society produces and organizes its material life is what ultimately shapes how its people think, what they believe, and what they value. So, how does this control actually work? Through ideology. For Marx, ideology is not just a set of political beliefs. It is the production of ideas, of conceptions, of consciousness that permeates a society. It includes everything from politics and law to morality and metaphysics. Crucially, these ideas are not neutral. In his work, The German Ideology, Marx, with his collaborator Friedrich Engels, delivered the critical insight. The ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. The class that controls the material forces of production, the base, also controls the means of mental production: the newspapers, the schools, the churches, the publishing houses. The function of this ruling ideology is to present the specific interests of the dominant class as the universal interests of everyone. It works to make the current social order seem natural, inevitable, and commonsensical, thus legitimizing the power of the ruling class and obscuring the exploitation that the system depends on. This brings us to the core of our investigation: false consciousness. While Marx himself never used this exact two-word phrase, it was coined by Engels to describe a state that is central to Marxist thought. False consciousness is the condition where the subordinate classes unwittingly accept and internalize the ideology of the dominant class. It is a systematic misrepresentation of reality in the minds of the oppressed, where they are unable to recognize the true nature of their own exploitation. They come to believe in ideas and values that actually run contrary to their own interests, thereby reinforcing the very system that subordinates them. The Hungarian philosopher György Lukács would later develop this concept, defining it as the distorted perception and beliefs that a class acquires through its life activities in a capitalist society. It is a consciousness that is fundamentally misaligned with reality. Decades after Marx, the Italian thinker Antonio Gramsci added a crucial layer of nuance to this theory. Jailed by Mussolini's fascist regime, Gramsci pondered why the workers' revolution predicted by Marx hadn't occurred in Western Europe. His answer was the concept of cultural hegemony. Gramsci realized that rule is maintained less by overt force and domination, and more by the subtle, pervasive manufacturing of consent. Hegemony is achieved when the worldview of the ruling class becomes so deeply embedded in the fabric of society through media, education, and culture that it is accepted as simple, common sense. This is a more sophisticated form of control. It isn't about coercion, it's about culture. The superstructure is not just a passive reflection of the base. It is an active battleground where the dominant class works tirelessly to make its ideology feel like the natural state of the world. This evolution in thinking, from Marx's more deterministic model to Gramsci's focus on cultural soft power, makes the theory more potent than ever in our media-saturated age, where the battle for hearts and minds is the main event. Finally, what is the personal, psychological cost of living within this architecture? Marx called it alienation. He argued that under capitalism, we become estranged in four fundamental ways. We are alienated from the product of our labor, which we do not own or control. We are alienated from the activity of labor itself, which is not a form of creative self-expression, but a means of survival. We are alienated from our own human nature, our species being, as Marx called it, our potential to be creative, conscious beings. And finally, we are alienated from each other, forced into competition rather than cooperation, seeing others as rivals or means to an end. This feeling of disconnection, of emptiness, of being a cog in a machine. This is the subjective experience of living under a system of false consciousness. It is the ghost in the machine of the modern world. Part 4. Now, with this powerful philosophical toolkit in hand, let's pull back the curtain on the modern world. Let's apply this framework to the paradoxes we identified earlier, and watch as the confusing puzzles of our time resolve into a clear and startling picture. First, let's deconstruct the myth of meritocracy. From a Marxist perspective, meritocracy is the perfect ruling ideology for our age. It is the ideal expression of the dominant material relationships. It takes a system structured by vast economic inequality and presents it as a fair contest of individual talent and effort. This ideology masterfully serves the interests of the dominant class by justifying their wealth as earned, while framing poverty as a personal failure of effort. It is the ultimate tool for generating false consciousness, because it encourages individuals to misperceive their real social position and to blame themselves for systemic disadvantages. This leads directly to hustle culture, which is the behavioral script that false consciousness demands. It is cultural hegemony in its most potent form. Workers internalize the values of the capitalist class: maximum productivity, relentless striving, the equation of self-worth with output, and come to see their own overexertion as a virtue. They wear their exploitation as a badge of honor, boasting about 70-hour work weeks because the hegemonic culture has taught them to experience this not as exploitation, but as a voluntary and noble pursuit of success. But how is this ideology manufactured and distributed so effectively? We must look to the modern means of mental production. In Marx's day, it was the pulpit and the printing press. Today, it is the omnipresent engine of consumer culture and social media. Consumer culture operates by creating an endless cycle of false needs. Through advertising, it promotes what Marx called commodity fetishism. We are taught to see products not as the result of human labor and complex social relations, but as magical objects imbued with status and meaning in themselves. The new smartphone isn't a product of global supply chains and exploited labor. It's a symbol of innovation and personal identity. This fetishism deepens our alienation, distracting us from the real human cost of our consumption. Our very identities become commodified, defined not by who we are, but by what we buy. Social media has supercharged this process, creating the most efficient factory for false consciousness in human history. Here, the means of material production and mental production have merged. The user is simultaneously the laborer, the commodity, and the consumer. You perform unpaid labor by creating content, posts, pictures, videos. This content, which is your own life and identity, becomes the commodity that is packaged and sold to advertisers. You then consume the algorithmically curated content of others, along with the targeted ads, reinforcing the dominant ideologies of consumerism, beauty, and success. This creates a perfect closed loop of alienation. You are alienated from your own life, which is now a product for public consumption, and the false consciousness is deeper than ever because you believe you are engaging in authentic self-expression while you are in fact performing free labor to power a system of capital accumulation that profits from your engagement. The factory of ideology is no longer a building you leave at 5 p.m. It's a glowing screen in your pocket. But why are we so susceptible to this? Modern psychology provides a chilling answer with System Justification Theory. This theory proposes that we have a profound, deep-seated psychological need to believe that the social systems we live in are just, legitimate, and stable. The alternative, that the world is chaotic, unfair, and arbitrary, is terrifying and creates immense cognitive dissonance. To avoid this anxiety, we are motivated to defend the status quo, even when it is disadvantageous to us. This palliative function leads people, especially those in marginalized groups, to rationalize inequality, internalize negative stereotypes, and resist change. It is the psychological engine of false consciousness, the subconscious mechanism that makes us cling to the comforting lie rather than face the uncomfortable truth. It is why we choose the familiar discomfort of the grind over the uncertain possibility of a different world. Part 5. The picture we have painted is a grim one. An architecture of control, a psychology of compliance, a life of alienation. It is easy at this point to fall into cynicism. But to do so would be to miss the most crucial part of this entire philosophy. For every diagnosis implies the possibility of a cure. For every lock, there is a key. The antidote to false consciousness is its antithesis, true consciousness. Marx originally called this class consciousness. For our purposes, let's reframe it not as a political slogan, but as a state of profound personal clarity. It is the achievement of an authentic consciousness, a clear-eyed, objective understanding of your true position in the world and the real social and economic forces that shape your life. It is the moment the marionette finally looks up and sees the strings. It is the transition from being a class in itself, a passive member of a group, to becoming a class for itself, an agent aware of its own interests and capable of acting on them. How do we achieve this? The path is not revolution in the streets, but revolution in the mind. It begins with radical self-reflection, and we can borrow a powerful tool to guide us, the practice of deconstruction. This is a method for taking apart the ideas, texts, and messages that surround us to reveal their hidden assumptions and contradictions. Here is a simple, practical toolkit for this mental liberation. First, identify the binary. Our culture constantly presents us with simple, false oppositions: success versus failure, hardworking versus lazy, winner versus loser, us versus them. Learn to spot these simplistic frames wherever you see them. Second, challenge the hierarchy. Within any binary, one side is always privileged. Ask yourself, which side is presented as superior and why? Who benefits from this hierarchy? What important nuances and complexities are being erased by this simple opposition? Third, question the common sense. When you encounter an idea that is presented as an obvious universal truth, like hard work is always rewarded, or capitalism is just human nature, stop. Ask the most powerful question. Cui bono? Who benefits from me believing this? What reality does this comfortable belief obscure? And finally, trace it to the base. Ask the ultimate Marxist question. How does this idea, this value, this belief, connect back to economic interests? Who profits from this ideology? This is the call to action. It is not a call to storm the barricades, but to overthrow the unquestioned dogmas in your own mind. It is a call to begin the difficult, patient, and deeply rewarding work of curating your own consciousness, of choosing your values instead of inheriting them. This is the path to becoming an individual for yourself. False consciousness is a life lived on rails, laid down by others, towards a destination you did not choose. True consciousness is the moment you realize you can step off the tracks and begin to draw your own map. The architecture has been revealed. The strings have been made visible. The choice now is yours.